Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Tectonic Takes podcast. I'm your host, Ivan Ornelas, and with me today is one of our other co-hosts here within the Tectonic Takes family, Chris Mercado. How are you doing?
Doing great, Ivan. Thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, it's good to have you on once again, and it's in better circumstances than just 3 days ago. So, in the wildest games of the season, two of the wildest games of the season happened within the
Yeah,
space of 3 days. We
back to
saw
back.
Real Salt Lake survive a Chofis hat trick to get a 4-3 win, which strengthened their cause in the playoffs and put ours in jeopardy. But then, following the announcement of Justin Morrow's retirement at the end of the season, we drew on that Goonies Never Say Die spirit from 2012 for one final push, starting with Austin. Despite going down 3-1 at halftime, the season was looking like it would go down in flames, but like a phoenix, the San Jose Earthquakes rose from the ashes to get a 4-3 result at Q2 Stadium. 3 valuable points, playoff hope still alive. What are your initial thoughts?
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. That game was electric, fire, and like you said, like a phoenix, rose from the ashes, kept fighting. I would say maybe call it the Chofis show. 5 goals in 2 games.
Yep.
He's completely turned around his form. The team is working really well with him, and it's not just him. It's a team game. The team did well. I thought Marcos Lopez's goal, his header, top class, top class. Marcos Lopez is a great defender, great attacker, and it was a good goal.
Yep, we'll get into all 7 of those goals in just a moment. Let's take a look at these lineups. So, the Quakes starting 11, we saw a bit of rotation here because we've had a lot of games in close succession. JT Marcinkowski is ever in goal. We had Tommy Thompson getting a rare start for him at right back. Nathan and Tanner Beeson, the center back partnership. Marcos Lopez in left back. Then we have Eric Remedy and Jackson Ewell holding it down at center midfield. Christian Espinoza, Chofis, and Carlos Fierro and those wingers and cam roles for Chofis. And up top, Benji Kikanovic. And then
Yep.
with the players that came off the bench, we had Osvaldo Alanis subbing in for Nathan late. We had Paul Marie coming in for Tommy Thompson, Jack Scan giving some relief for Christian Espinoza. Once again, everyone's favorite substitution, Andy Rios for Chofis. And then Kate Cowell came on at halftime with Carlos Fierro taking on the first half and Kate Cowell picking up where he left off. No Chris Wondolowski this time around, perhaps saving him for another day.
Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah. So, what were your thoughts on this lineup and the sub decisions?
I think this lineup is pretty solid lineup. I think the good rotation players. I thought our striker up there, he was making a couple of good runs. Unlucky to be offside a couple of times. I thought he has good striker movement, and it's important for us to play all of our players, and so they all get their legs ready and continue for the rest of the season. I do think the absence of Judson today or yesterday for that game was a little bit maybe missed. He's a hardworking player, but other than that, pretty solid lineup.
Yeah, I think so too. I think some of these decisions were perhaps out of necessity, both in terms of the starting lineup and then which players came off the bench, which players came off the bench at what time, and the case to not play Chris Wondolowski at all. I think it was also situational where they had the lead already and they needed to sub in Alanis to close the game out. So
Yep.
I think you have to work with what you got. I think the MLS is a very difficult league to rotate in, not necessarily deciding to rotate. Obviously, you do have to when the fixtures get this congested, but how you do it and when is very important. There's no like Chelsea, if they have a Champions League match midweek and then they have a team like Norwich coming up on the weekend, it's obvious that they're going to rotate players for the Norwich game because they think that even with some of their substitutes, they should be able to beat Norwich. You don't necessarily have that luxury in MLS. Austin is bottom of the Western Conference, and we needed a strong lineup to get this win.
Absolutely. It's definitely a difficult league, and it's no small feat trying to travel every week, away games, and so the team definitely has to be strong. They have to be working together, and everybody has to give 110% in order to go out, go away, and get the 3 points.
Right. So along with no Judson for this match, we still
Mhm.
don't know when we're getting Shea Salinas back. We might not get Jeremy Abobasi back for the rest of the season, unfortunately. Nothing has been said on that front, so it's just a hunch at this point. No news isn't necessarily good news in this case, and
Yeah, true.
Siad Haji has a undisclosed injury as well. He was listed as questionable for this game. We didn't see him on the lineup. And I did feel bad for Haji because at the beginning of the season, it seemed like he was going to have a role to play
Yeah,
in certain games, and it just
yeah,
hasn't worked out for him.
yeah, definitely. I thought so too. I like his style of play. The little bit that we've seen of him in a Quake shirt, the little flick up. I'm never gonna forget that. Earlier on, forget against who that was. A little flick up and over the attacker there was a touch of class, and that just shows that Haji is a player to see for the future. I'd love to see Matias Almeida integrate him into the system he has going on currently.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago when we were saying similar things about K Cal. It's like, okay, we've seen some good things from him. I can't wait to see more. And eventually we have seen more and we haven't been disappointed. So we just have to be a little more patient and hopefully Siad Haji, whatever injury he has, he can recover from that. And if not by the end of this season, we'll see more of him in 2022.
Yeah, definitely him. The link up between him and Cade Cowell, I'm sure, will be great. They've been practicing together, and you know they'll go from there.
And that comment has also reminded me that as the season goes on, and maybe some expectations have been tempered because KCal hasn't started as many games after the All-Star break, but the links to moves to Europe or elsewhere have started to diminish for KCal. And I think that could still be a good thing because he is still very young. He's got plenty of time to make that big move. And if he continues to play regular game time for the San Jose Earthquakes, that will only be good for him.
I agree. He has to focus on where he is now. Focus on his minutes here at the Earthquakes, and everything else will fall into place. I would love for him to stay here in the Earthquakes and become a legend. What a story that could be. But down the road, I'm sure a couple of offers will come in for him, and that's when things really hit the fan. We're gonna have to see what happens from there.
It's not often that I hear that phrase, something hitting the fan being a good thing. So that's pretty interesting there. And now
Yeah.
let's go take a look at this Austin lineup. So there's some familiar names in here. There was one that played, one that was on the bench, and one that wasn't even on the bench. All former San Jose Earthquakes players. Do you know who I'm talking about?
We had Nick Lima there. Oh, what
Yes.
a why is Nick Lima gone into Austin? No, having him play against us, I've seen him give us a couple of passes. He's still playing with us. He still has the San Jose spirit. Uh, no, but we had him there, and who would you say was the other player?
So on the bench for Austin was their backup goalkeeper, Andrew Tarbell.
Yeah, that man.
Yeah, it's been a rocky relationship with Andrew Tarbell. Not many Quicks fans were shedding tears when he left, but he's doing all right for himself. He was on the Columbus Crew team that won the MLS Cup last year, and he played a few games along the way. So good for him. And the one absence is former Quakes forward Danny Houston, who was out with a left hip injury. So we didn't get to see him at all in this game. And I think injuries, much like they have hindered his availability for San Jose Earthquakes, it's been that way for Austin as well. We know the impact he can have from the bench and even sometimes from starting positions. So but you also look at their bench and they had players like Diego Fagundes and Cecilio Dominguez. So even without Danny Houston, they had plenty of options to call upon for more goals off the bench, which is very fortunate that we didn't concede any goals in the second half given those subs.
Yeah, definitely. Talking about the second half, I would like to say that the Quakes absolutely turned it around. The first half, it looked like Austin were controlling the game. They just looked calm and composed on the ball. They didn't seem to be in any rush to make any forced passes, and it flipped. I don't know. The team talk must have definitely worked. Second half, the Quakes came out and they showed them they were talking business. We got out there, got the goals, and Chofis, that second goal after the penalty was definitely something to strike the ball and finish the rebound. It's such a class.
I'll wrap up now the Austin lineup, and then we'll go into each goal one at a time. So for Austin, they have Brad Stuber in goal, who has been one of the better goalkeepers this season. Then you have a back line of Hector Jimenez, Julio Cascante, Johan Romagna, and Nick Lima, of course. And then holding it down in the center of the park, they had Daniel Pereira and Alexander Ring, although he didn't finish the game. We'll go into that as well. Then in the right wing spot, they had John Gallagher. In the cam, they had Sebastian Driussi. And then in the left wing spot, they have Thomas Pochettino, with getting his first start of the season, Moussa Digite of Senegal, starting ahead of usually Cecilio Dominguez. But like we mentioned, he came off the bench, as well as Fagundes. Mackenzie Gaines as well was a late substitute for Julio Cascante. And their last option was the Paraguayan Ronnie Redes, although technically he was the last offensive option. He was subbed on at the same time as Fagundes. But one other notable absence for Austin FC with a concussion is Matt Bezler, former U.S. men's national team player. And it's notable because this is the first team he's played for other than Sporting Kansas City. He's made 294 appearances in Kansas City. So it was definitely weird to see him in different colors or in a different team this season.
Yeah, 294 appearances, that is a lifetime of appearances. That's definitely a lot,
Right. And during the height of his involvement with the national team, he had some opportunities to go to Europe, and through his decisions as well as moves perhaps not panning out, or fearing maybe that a move would have resulted him in not getting regular game time, he just stuck with Sporting Kansas City. He won an MLS Cup with them in 2013, and he went on to achieve other good things as well.
That goes to show. Yeah. that goes to show, you stick around long enough and you build a good team, and you could build something and actually win something. That goes for the Quakes too. We'd love to see a couple players stick around and really perform and really push for the title and really go for it and get the wins.
Yeah, and it's not to say that Chris Wondolowski will be regretting too much about his career. I think he loves San Jose and the team. But when he won the Supporter Shield in 2012, I don't think he nor Quakes fans envisioned that would be the most recent trophy that they have won.
Yeah, we would have loved to have more trophies. I guess things don't always pan out like in a movie or so. Yeah. There's always hard fights or hard fights to go through, but I mean that's still a trophy. Yeah, it's still a trophy. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's still something, and there are many players that stick around for clubs that don't win anything, so we are grateful for that.
Very true. Very true.
And now for the goals. And the first half of this is going to be pretty frustrating, but then we're going to get into the good stuff. So the first goal came in the 6th minute of this match. Driussi, he was a game-changing signing for Austin in the sense that it's not going to be enough to turn their season around to the point that they get to the playoffs, but it has made them a better team. He scored the opening goal. It was a very reactive, instinctive goal where JT Marcinkowski made the initial save, but
great save.
Driussi snuck behind Tanner Beeson and cashed in for the first goal. And for all the good work Tanner Beeson has done this season, I think that was something Beeson could have done better.
Yeah, you can't leave that man running in from behind. I believe somebody from the midfield as well. Maybe Ramedi could have, tracked the runner. But, I want to say a great save from JT Marcinkowski. That save was a good reaction save. It's just a bit unfortunate, you have to rely on your defenders and possibly the midfielder to track back. And, the second touch was unfortunately a goal, but we go into the second goal where, a second goal was more of a build-up play from Austin's part. They had a couple a couple good touches on the ball where they coming through the left, building up from the midfield, and they give a good triangle pass around the D of the Earthquakes box, and the cross to the back post. It's a very low cross on the back post was a very effective play, and we saw ourselves go down and concede again there.
Yeah, so the tricky in Tanner Beason's defense, and not necessarily contradicting myself, hopefully, I believe he was facing JT Marcinkowski, so it is kind of difficult to be an owl in that situation and know who's coming behind you. But it is part of being a defender. You're constantly shifting. You're not looking in one direction the whole time. And what could have helped Tanner Beason as well as other defenders around him, like you mentioned, communicating and letting him know that someone was coming for him. But that was okay at the time, because 11 minutes later, Marcos Lopez had a pretty good header. It wasn't a 6-yard box kind of header from a set piece. It was from further out than that.
Definitely great header. The keeper couldn't stop it. Just enough power on it from Marcos Lopez to sink it in the top, pretty close to the top bins. It was a great header, and from a Fierro corner, I believe.
Yeah, it was Fierro with the assist with that corner. And that's the San Jose Earthquakes usually have excelled that in seasons past, that they've been able to get a lot of goals from set pieces. And what we've seen this season is they would often be a little bit wasteful. So that was a very important goal to get. And unfortunately, their tied situation wouldn't last beyond the 35th minute. John Gallagher made it 2-1, and the defense completely fell apart on this one. The initial pass to get into the final third, it was perfectly timed, so it wasn't offside. And there was 3 Austin attackers that made the same run to stay onside, and they were in behind the defense. And it was just a simple FIFA sweaty goal. And it was just, what was the defense doing? I couldn't tell you. And other than they just got caught flat-footed and sleeping. That's simply what it came down to, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. I would also give a little credit to Austin FC for the play, but I would say we got to do better on those. We can't switch off defensively. The game is 90 minutes, sometimes 120 minutes. You got to be on your game at all times and making sure you are communicative, and you're telling your players who to mark and where the runners are. And that's just what we didn't do. We switched off for that little bit, and they got their goal.
Yep. And so the final goal of the first half, and this guy would already played a role in the assist for the Gallagher goal, and he would continue to play a role both good and bad for Austin FC throughout the game. You had Alexander Ring, who just added insult to injury there. He scored a goal from outside the box, and it was his 4th goal of the year. So he's not someone who scores a lot of goals, but you wouldn't have guessed that from the attempt that he took to end the half on an even bigger high for Austin. And it's not surprising in the sense that he is a good player. He's a Finnish international, but still, for the Quakes to go down 3-1 at halftime, and I tweeted this, and I can't be more glad to have been wrong about this tweet, that this is it. Like, I didn't see a comeback happening. I saw this team falling apart. I thought whatever sort of comeback energy this team had left went to waste against the Real Salt Lake side that beat us on Wednesday. And there was an Olympico attempt by Chofis that could have been great. It forced a good save from Brad Stuver, but that felt like a last resort move to me. If you're not creating anything else, you try that. And if it worked, it would have been great, but that shouldn't have been plan A. It should have been plan C or plan D. So I was thinking, if the Quakes are running out of ideas against Austin, which is probably, with all due respect, the easiest opponent they have left in the schedule, then it's not going to get any better. But thankfully, it got better this time around, and they'll live to fight another day. And it starts with Christian Espinosa's goal 4 minutes into the second half.
Absolutely. Christian Espinosa, I'm glad he kicked off the comeback. I'm absolutely glad because I'm buzzing for the result. I'm buzzing for the results last night. It was great.
I think so. And I've said this in several podcasts, and I feel like it still bears repeating because I always talk to Quakes fans who wonder, what does Christian Espinosa do on this team? And sometimes, and while I think this Quakes team is decent and talented, sometimes it does feel like Christian Espinosa is a quarterback without a receiver. He is making good plays every game, and sometimes it produces results, sometimes it doesn't. Maybe he's a bit more assist heavy and he could add a few more goals to his game, but the goals he does score tend to be very important, and that was the case this time. And the assist from Kikanovic also strengthens his calls to get more minutes, especially in comparison to Andy Rios.
Yeah, I would say so too. He really impressed me up there. Like I mentioned earlier, he makes a couple of good runs. The assist definitely helps his cause for him to get more minutes in rotation.
What did you think of the penalty that led to Chofis' goal to make it 3-3?
It's a penalty, and Chofis placed it well. He placed it well. Forced the keeper. He forced the keeper to. I mean, the keeper went the right way, but he forced the keeper to try to make the save, and it still went in just to show that he placed it correctly. And they got into a bit of a scuffle there after the penalty. I don't know if you want to comment a bit on that.
Yeah, so after the penalty, Chofis scored. It was 3-3, and what I appreciate about the Quakes is you don't often see this if the scoreline is tied or in your favor. In this case, it was tied, not still like 3-2 down or something. The Quakes were trying to get the ball back, and there was an Austin player preventing them from doing it. I believe it was Romagna, but I wasn't entirely sure. But anyway, I think Espinosa pushed him out of the way, the Austin player, and then Brad Stuver came in with a Wario shoulder tackle and tried to get it back, and then a brawl ensued. And
a whole body slam from the goalkeeper on our player.
Yeah, it's like Brad Stuver. I didn't know you knew the move double edge, but it didn't seem to do any recoil damage. Anyway,
none at all.
Both Espinosa and Stuver got a yellow card. Stuver potentially lucky to have escaped a red because, if anything, it was unnecessary. Like the
absolutely unnecessary.
Dead, and it was retaliation too. I do think Espinosa could have handled it better because there was still time left and it wasn't the 89th minute going for a winner sort of situation. I appreciate the desire to want to get the game restarted and get that winning goal, but it definitely could have been avoided. Both parties were at fault, and maybe the fair thing to do was to just give both a yellow card and move on.
Yeah, I would say the referee was losing the game a bit. It was getting a little bit out of his control. If he would have sent off the keeper there, I'm not quite convinced we would have gotten the fourth goal. I feel like because of the scuffle, maybe their goalkeeper was a bit, a bit scattered brain and didn't make the save following from Chofis. But that little kickoff there, it was I personally would have given the goalkeeper a red. The ball's not in play. He didn't go for the ball. It was completely intentional. It was more of a malicious attack than anything else. Personally, I would have been a red for me, but yeah, a yellow. It keeps the game. And from the ref's perspective, to keep it under control again, get it under wraps, and let the game play on. That's what we all want to see at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think I can live with the refereeing decision on there, but it hasn't been the case with every referee decision that has been made these last two games, that's for sure. And we'll talk more about that with some of the listener questions about Almeida in particular, who of course was suspended for this game. And the last goal came from Chofis, and it was another clutch moment for him. We spoke about his 5 goals in 2 games. It's very impressive stuff.
Yeah, Chofis, I don't know if he's going to have back problems, but I know he's been carrying the Quakes for a while. These last 2 games,
yeah,
it's pretty impressive. That a hat trick is great, and back to back, another game, another performance, 2 goals, very important goals. And, a penalty is hard to score from the spot. And the second finish is just a touch of class, in my opinion.
Probably the equivalent of doing 1 squat for every minute he played in these last 2 games, and with at least 2 of those 45-pound plates on each side.
Yeah.
So great stuff from Chofis, and he's come in a great run of form, and I think he's definitely proven to be a worthwhile signing. And we will also talk about his future as a Quakes player later on in the podcast. But 2 minutes after that, it went from bad to worse for Austin. Alexander Ring got tagged with his second yellow card and on an overeager tackle. It was an awful tackle, and terrible. Normally, if you're on a yellow card, you think that's the last thing I want to do. Like, let someone else deal with it who's not on a yellow.
100%. Yeah, that tackle was not great. And you know what? I'm happy he made the tackle because, at the end he gets sent off there. It gives us a little bit of an advantage.
So you think
to keep playing.
So you think, but then the next thing that happens is I notice is like, Austin still has a lot of the ball. And then 10 minutes more pass. Oh, here's another corner for Austin. Oh, here's another shot. Like, what the hell is going on? Like, Austin was still piling on pressure. This is not supposed to happen.
With 10 men versus 11, that stuff shouldn't happen. But overall, the Quakes got the result, and I'm happy that keeps us in for contention. I feel like with the 9 games to go, we're still in it. We just have to keep fighting. You never say die, and the results away are always going to be difficult. They're always going to be difficult, and like you said, Austin is definitely one of the easier teams we had left. Next, I believe we have the Galaxy, right?
LAFC.
LAFC. Yeah, another derby. We have to completely perform. Yes. It's only going to get harder from here. Test of character.
And I'll be clear, because maybe there's an Austin fan or two listening to this. Easiest doesn't mean easy, because every team in MLS can put up a fight, and Austin definitely did that. And I think the table, someone has to be at the bottom. It happens to be Austin, but we've seen some bad teams in MLS before, and Austin don't scratch like the worst MLS team ever conversation. Like, they're doing they're not doing great, obviously, because the table does have some truth to it in the sense that they haven't been getting the results, but you can see pieces of a team that can be a winning team with Austin, given a little more time, a couple more seasons. And a lot of these players, whether it be with Austin or someone else, I wouldn't be surprised to see them going far in the playoffs, potentially lifting that trophy in the end.
They're a good expansion team. I personally don't, personally, I like the color green a lot. I think it's a good color for a team, a good expansion team. They got a couple of good players off of us, like you mentioned. You got Nick Lima there and Danny Husin and the goalkeeper there. They got good players. They have their own squad in their own right, and they could do something down the line.
I would probably be a bit biased if I were saying like Nick Lima was one of the most important players. He's definitely a contributor, but I think the acquisitions they've made from outside the MLS have been the most impressive, such as Sebastian Driussi. I think that's going to serve them well in the future.
Yeah, I would agree.
Let's quickly review some of the stats. Each team had 15 shots in this game. Austin had 10 on target. The Quakes had 8. Austin had a 51% possession advantage. Quakes had a higher passing accuracy, 83% to 79. Both created 2 chances and had 8 corners. Austin had 17 fouls and San Jose had 10. San Jose had 2 offsides, and there were 9 yellow cards given to 8 different players. So it was definitely a slugfest at times.
Yeah. I would say a pretty balanced game, given by those stats. The possession was kind of give and take. I'm sure that's a little bit of an average, because there was times that one team would have the ball more than the other. But for there to be that many fouls, there was definitely a bit of a slugfest.
And the biggest news to come out of the press conference is that Matias Almeida's contract with the San Jose Earthquakes as manager has no Chivas buyback clause. So this is usually the time of year as the MLS season comes to a close where the rumors for Matias Almeida to go somewhere in Mexico start to ramp up, and he continues to dispel them. Whether people believe them or not, it depends on whether you're a San Jose Earthquakes fan or a Chivas fan usually, but I think Matias Almeida, he doesn't seem like he's someone who wants to leave. He may have looked very disappointed and defeated. He certainly was angry at many things potentially when I got to speak with him in the press conference on Wednesday, but he's human. He's allowed to feel some disappointment at times, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he's booking a flight to Guadalajara.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm personally a big Matias Almeida fan. I would love for him to stay here in the Earthquakes. I think he's building a really good project. He's on a couple of years now, and I would love for him to stick around. I would love for it. And hearing the news of him not having that buyback clause or Chivas not having the buyback clause, it's, my opinion, a bit of good news. What is your opinion on that?
I think it's good news. I think Matias Almeida, he hasn't gotten everything right, and sometimes when he gets it wrong, it's really a head scratcher. But he's instilled a lot of qualities in this Earthquakes team that I think can be productive towards making them a more competitive team in this league. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can still do with however long he chooses to be here. And on that note, I'll talk about some of the recent results. And as for the weekday matches, the ones that stand out to me are the ones from the Leagues Cup and the CONCACAF Champions League. So the good news for MLS is that the Seattle Sounders beat Santos Laguna 1-0 in the Leagues Cup semifinals. So they will face Club Leon, who beat Pumas 2-0 in their semifinal, in the final at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. That'll be an interesting one. I think Seattle Sounders would have a good chance to beat Club Leon, but Liga MX have MLS's number, and I think that is apparent when you look at the CONCACAF Champions League results, where on one hand, Monterrey beat Cruz Azul pretty convincingly 4-1 in one semifinal. In the MLS versus Liga MX matchup, Club America mirrored their 2-0 victory from the Azteca and did that again in Philadelphia to knock out the last MLS club standing in that competition. So this CONCACAF Champions League final will be between Club America and Monterrey. Your thoughts?
That's going to be a final. I'd love to see an MLS team make it to the final and take it all the way. It's always seems to be either a Mexican team or, along those lines. It's just, I think it's going to be a good game. Monterrey, America is a really good team. They got Ochoa back, and we all know what he's capable of, keeping those keeping the ball out of the net. And for a final, if I could give a prediction, I'm gonna just go out on a limb and say it's gonna be 4-3 for America.
Wow. Oh, okay.
I don't know why. Personally, I am a Chivas supporter.
Yeah, me too.
I just feel at the end of the day, maybe Guillermo's probably gonna have a couple of good saves. That's gonna edge it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one for sure. Those are the two strongest teams within the last few years overall, because everything shifts so often in the Mexican domestic leagues, similar to MLS. And while America is still up there in the table for the Apertura season right now, Monterrey is kind of in the middle of the pack. So it'll be interesting. And then some of the more recent MLS results, we have the Red Bulls beating Inter Miami 4-0, which was a surprise to me. Atlanta United beat DC United 3-2. Columbus Crew held New England Revolution to a 1-1 draw. New York City beat Cincinnati 2-1. Toronto beat Nashville 2-1. That was the shock of the weekend because Toronto have had an awful season. And a good result for us in the sense that they're our rivals. Not necessarily it helps our position, but Minnesota beat LA Galaxy 3-0. And wrapping it up, you had Houston Dynamo beating FC Dallas 3-2. Now that result does help San Jose Earthquakes because it keeps FC Dallas from moving up. And Real Salt Lake beat Seattle Sounders 1-0, which is not good for us, but it's nice seeing Seattle Sounders squirm a bit too. So we'll be okay. We have one more match coming up against Real Salt Lake this season. So if it comes down to it, we do have a chance to make up some ground. But any thoughts on those results?
Pretty solid results, I would say. It could come down to the wire, for the Quakes. Like you said, we still have the game versus Real Salt Lake. It could come down to the wire for us to qualify or not. The thing about this team, about the San Jose Earthquakes, is I don't believe we have top-notch quality players, but I do believe we have this team or this worth ethic and belief that with the right players and the right pieces that we could make a push and make it to there. And I feel like they thrive off of that energy, like we saw in the MLS's back tournament, that they just want to go out there and play and play for glory and give it their all. So it could come down to the wire, making it to the playoffs, but a good set of results, I would say, especially with that Dallas one that helped us out.
Yeah, and looking at how that all shapes up the tables here. So Western Conference, it's still a solid top three. Sporting Kansas City, Seattle Sounders, and Colorado Rapids. 5-point gap between Rapids in third with LA Galaxy in fourth. A few weeks ago, it looked like LA Galaxy was the end of the top tier of Western Conference, but now they're starting to get dragged down a bit. They're only 2 points ahead of Real Salt Lake in fifth. And then a further 2 points down, you have both the Timbers and Minnesota United, which means below the playoff line, LAFC with 33 points, San Jose Earthquakes with 30 points, Vancouver Whitecaps, not much was expected of them this season, but they're still in it with 29 points. And then it's the Dallas trio rounding out the table. What are your thoughts on the Western Conference?
I still want to see the Quakes make the push.
I think they can, yeah.
With that table that you just laid out there, I think that's definitely still a possibility. But like I might have mentioned, it's still coming down to the wire. It's still all to play for. With 9 games to go, it's I feel like the table might get shaken up a bit by the end of the season.
You need a bit of fortune at this point because the gap is more than 3 points between playoffs and not playoffs for the San Jose Earthquakes. You don't want it to get more than even 6 points would be tough because then you need to make up 2 wins, whereas 4 points means you have to make up a win and a draw. And
Definitely.
It's still very unbalanced in the sense that some teams like the Whitecaps have only played 23 games. Some like FC Dallas have played 26. Quakes are currently at 25. So we'll see what happens there. A quick look at the Eastern Conference. New England Revolution dropped points, but they don't care. They're at 56 points, 15 ahead of second place Nashville. And then it becomes a mess. Only 7 points separate third place New York from 10th place Columbus Crew. So all those teams are still in it. Red Bulls are also at 26 points. It might be too little too late, but with that 4-0 win over Inter Miami, like they don't look like they're giving up on this season. The same cannot be said for the bottom 3. There's a good win for Toronto over Nashville, but they're still bottom with 18 points below Chicago Fire and Cincinnati. Your thoughts on the East?
That's a pretty crazy table. You said 15 points clear at the top and everyone else at the bottom is 7 points within. That's a pretty crazy table. It's all to play for there.
Yeah, and it could be weird to see. I think we're used to seeing a stronger Western Conference, but if you look at the playoff line, you can see a star-studded Inter Miami miss out. You could see Philadelphia Union, last season's Supporter Shield, miss out. You could see last season's champions, Columbus Crew, who defeated Seattle in the final, miss out if the playoffs were to start today. So the Eastern Conference is a bit of a bloodbath as well.
Yeah, very interesting table that they got going on.
Upcoming MLS and other relevant games. We have some other games coming up today even. So this table will change after we are done recording. Montreal versus Chicago Fire, Philadelphia Union versus Orlando, Portland Timbers versus LAFC. That's going to be a key game, and I'll explain why in just a sec. And Colorado Rapids versus Vancouver Whitecaps. And then during the week, we have the League Cup final between Leon and Seattle Sounders. We have even the Canadian Championship between Toronto versus York United. I imagine that's a preliminary round. And we have some more midweek action, most notably the New York Red Bulls and New York City, the New York Derby there. And then more MLS to come with Saturday and Sunday's schedule there. What game stands out the most to you, Chris? Let's focus on Saturday and Sunday since I didn't pick out any of those games in particular.
For Saturday and Sunday, sorry, can you say the game that was for Saturday and Sunday? I heard that they got the New York.
They actually also meet on Saturday, so it's going to be the reverse. They play once on Wednesday, which will be hosted by New York City. No, I think it'll be hosted in Red Bull Arena on Wednesday, and then it'll be hosted in Yankee Stadium on Saturday. So I think that'll be the one to look out for. Along with on Sunday, I'm going to circle the Sporting Kansas City versus Seattle Sounders game, the two best teams in the Western Conference going head-to-head there.
Yeah, I would agree with that, kind of going back to the New York result, that's, they're going to play on Wednesday, then again on Saturday. That should be two good fixtures there. But for the Sunday game, definitely also good fixtures.
We'll get to see if the Red Bulls beating Inter Miami 4-0 is a fluke or not, because New York City, they have to be on their guard too, because they only barely beat Cincinnati.
Yeah.
All right, and then now we can start to see the finish line for the Quakes. So, of course, we know they play LAFC at home Saturday, September 25th, 7 p.m. And then after that, 4 days later, they have Sounders at home. Then they go to British Columbia to take on Vancouver Whitecaps 3 days later before the international break. Then the rest of their games, LAFC on the road, Austin at home, Whitecaps at home, Timbers at Providence Park. They close out the season with Real Salt Lake at Rio Tinto Stadium, and their final game of the season is at home to FC Dallas. So you can start to sort of put some potential pieces together, what to expect, but it's going to be very interesting.
That it will be.
Yep, and now let's answer some of these listener questions. Thank you to everyone who asked a question here. And we'll start with a very simple question. So Nico Gonzalez, who is also known on Discord as Chofis with Cheese, at Nico Gonzalez on Twitter, asks, do we deserve Chofis? And I think it's fair to say he is the hero we need, but perhaps not we deserve, because the Quakes have made it hard on him.
Yeah, at times I would say so. But every team in the MLS needs a goal scorer.
Yeah.
And Chofis has been that man, at least for the last two games. And we've seen him before pop up with a couple of good goals, moving into some good space. I would say yes, we do deserve him, but I would love for him to stay. We'll see how that plays out, though.
And my good friend David Alcaraz, he is a LAFC and Chivas fan, so he asks if we think Chofis will stay with San Jose in 2022, because he is on loan at Chivas. That loan expires at the end of the season, and they do get priority what they decide they want to do him. And it's a catch-22, because you want Chofis to do well so the Quakes can do well this season. But if he does so well that Chivas feel like they need him for the Clausura in 2022, we could be left without our best goal scorer, at least right now.
Yeah, definitely. You make a good point there for sure. And I think Chofis said that he was loving life in San Jose. That could play a piece. Maybe he could talk to the directors there at Chivas, and I don't know how the business would go, that business aspect would go. But, if he's loving life here and we're loving life with him here, it could be a good thing for him to stay here if all parties agree.
Yeah, and I believe him when he says he wants to stay. because he scored a hat trick and he lost a game. It's not easy to say that when your team does that to you, not necessarily in the sense that it was intentional, but there's no other way to put it. Like, it was a really tough position for him to be put in. So hopefully it all works out and we get to see him again next season, but it's not a guarantee.
Yeah, the Quakes have been pretty good at securing those loan to buy deals.
Mm-hmm.
We had the Espinosa for an example, and that's
a
good. Yeah, that's a great piece of business. Personally, think so. But if we could do it again, that'd be great. I would love to see Chofis stay.
I will say Espinosa was a different situation because, as talented as he is, he wasn't getting too much game time with Villarreal. So it was no sweat off their back to let him stay at San Jose Earthquakes permanently since he wasn't in their long-term plans. It could potentially be different for Chivas, especially since they have that policy of only playing Mexican players. So their pool of talent is significantly smaller compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah, that's a big thing to think about as well. You make a good point.
We have a question that multiple people asked in different ways. We'll save that for last. We'll go on to Jordy Smith. I think Chofis, or maybe the team as a whole, has figured out how to make Chofis' style of play much more effective. I'd like to know what Chofis thinks about his recent ability to create space, and keep defenders on the back foot. He looks amazing right now. I think Chofis has got to be loving the purple patch he's in, and hopefully this form becomes the Chofis that we expect him to be, because you know what they say, form is temporary, but class is forever.
Yeah, that is a very true statement. And if he keeps it up, that statement will ring true because, Chofis has been finding form. The team has been finding form with Chofis. The way their play styles have been complementing each other. He's finding a lot of space outside of the D. I see him kind of just doing a little bit of a motion where he walks around, and then he scored a couple of good positional goals where he has a good striker instinct, and a good couple of physical goals where he has the ability to go and just force the ball into the net, but the Quakes have been able to work with him, and we're reaping in the benefits now from that.
Ryan, also known as Donum on Discord, asks, is our lack of consistent style over time the mark of a good team or a bad team? He cites things such as going from a man marking system to this new play style, players playing out of position, spurts of goals followed by droughts. And I think the jury is still out. The Quakes have been so inconsistent, so Jekyll and Hyde, that I can't really put my finger on whether they are truly a good team or they're truly a bad team. Like, sometimes they're a little bit of both.
Yeah, I would say that kind of falls on, sometimes they play with belief. I believe they're more of like a good average team, but with that extra bit of energy and burst that comes from belief and wanting to play for the shirt.
Yep, that is definitely a factor, I think. And that's been a consistent thing we've been hearing from former players when we've had them for interviews, as well as when we do get a chance to be at the press conferences as well, that players seem to enjoy playing for San Jose Earthquakes through the good and the bad.
Yeah, we had sadly Jonesworth out of the part. I mean, I feel like still a good piece of business, but he said that he was loving life in San Jose, that he was very grateful, and other players as well. I'm sure it's not a bad place to play.
Next, we have Nabil, and my main question is just how we as fans should assess Almeida. I don't think the Quakes roster has a lot of top-end talent, so playoffs or bust isn't necessarily fair to Almeida. So what should be the main goal? And I think I'll have to disagree with Nabil there, because Almeida has been at the helm for San Jose Earthquakes for several seasons now. And especially now that 7 teams make the playoffs in each conference, I think you do get judged on playoffs or not. Whether it's fair or not, that can be debated. But I do think making it to the playoffs in back-to-back seasons, something that Quakes haven't been able to do in a long time, would be an important barometer to see what's going on with Matias Almeida's influence on this team.
Yeah, that would be a great achievement. Back-to-back seasons into the playoffs. That could speak to what he is trying to build here at San Jose Earthquakes.
Yep. John on Twitter asks, do you think Matias will go to 3 center backs again to bring some stability, or will this untamed style of play be the decision he makes to make this playoff push? And I think right now, I think he feels more comfortable with the 4 at the back. I think if you go back and forth too many times, it's going to shake things up and make things harder for the defense. And it can be something that offenses can exploit.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I would say stick with the back 4. If I say maybe if he sees it fit in some kind of tactical situation where maybe the other team is a man down and we need a goal, maybe you could employ some in-game tactics type of thing. But I would say probably starting lineup, 4 defenders at the back should be the way to go.
All right, and next we have D Devlin 2. With Matias suspended, why was Rios put into this lineup still? And it was kind of a rhetorical question. He answered it himself, but I do also want to highlight a response from Dom from Quicks after 90, or I believe that's, sorry, I get the podcast mixed up, and your background is a little windy, Chris, so that's kind of a factor. But
sorry about that.
Dom mentioned Rios is a key piece of the club culture and locker room, which is why he gets minutes. And I do think that is something that fans we don't often consider or appreciate, and that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, we are coming close on time here. I know you have to go, so I'm just going to address the remaining fan questions. So Mark N says if Abel isn't playing, he wants Kikanovic in, and I agree that he should get a bit more of the minutes that Rios is getting. Thanks for helping with that background noise there. And also, he wants to see K to attack more 1v1 to gain that confidence. And I think he does that fine, but I do think his decision-making can be improved a little bit more. Next for Eli Sandoval Jr., he wanted to congratulate us on our success with this awesome podcast. Thank you, Eli. And
thank you, Eli.
And he thinks that we're beginning to see what Chofis can do. He's been amazing in these last few games. He hopes that he can keep this production. And he also wants to give a shout out to Remedy. He's been a key cog in midfield. And that also begs the question, we forgot to mention this. Who is your player of the match? Would you say still Chofis?
Ooh, yeah, I would say probably Chofis. It's not easy to score the penalty under pressure, and it's not easy to score that goal that he did, off of the rebound. It was between 3 players, I believe, to win the ball between 3 players and still get it in the back of the net. It was good. I would probably give the man of the match for Chofis.
Yeah, I'll give Chofis man of the match with an honorable mention to JT Marcinkowski. Despite conceding 7 goals in 2 games, JT Marcinkowski has played very well for the most part. There's a couple of mistakes, but he's made up for it with some big saves, and we don't win this game without him.
That's true.
Eli also added, do you feel like Matias's criticism of the pro refs are justified? And we can go on and on about the referees. My opinion is, I think the criticism is justified, but you can criticize them differently if you're a fan versus if you're a coach. You are more high profile as a coach, so there are some things that Almeida has to understand when he's addressing the media and talking about the referees. But at the same time, he is in a bit of a tough situation, because even if you're the nicest person and suggesting the referees do something differently, anything can be considered criticism. So I don't envy his position regarding how he's dealing with the referees.
Yeah, I don't either. Like you said, as the coach, it's definitely a hard spot to be in. If you want to say something about the referees, it's a lot more high profile. So, yeah, that's definitely the position that he's in, and I couldn't knock him for it.
All right, and before we get into our final question, we have a couple questions from our fellow Tectonic Takes podcasters. Abel asks, there's a missing piece in the defense besides Nathan. And I believe that if you were to upgrade anyone in the defense, it'd probably be at that right back position. I'm not saying Nick Lima would be the answer, but I think Luciano Abacasi's at best was a lateral move.
Yeah, I would agree. Abacasi is definitely he puts in a shift, when he's needed by Almeida, but we need to step up in quality in that position. I would agree. Maybe I could maybe argue that another center back to partner Nathan, somebody who could carry the ball out and who could play a couple of good through balls through the midfield. We've seen Nathan be very
Like
aggressive.
Alanis?
Yeah, like Alanis, but I would say someone like maybe more depth. If we could have more depth, we can't go wrong with that. Especially when we go away games, building a strong team would never work against you. And yeah, I would agree with you also. The right back position could be useful.
I'll leave this one to you, and it's just a one word or like one acronym answer question. Favi asks, what is Chofis' best position, cam or right winger?
Center forward.
You think you should be the number 9 rather than either of those two? You pick option C.
Option C, yeah.
Okay.
I would say he's a good striker. I like him as like the center forward position. Just tucked in, like maybe tucked out a bit from the striker position. Not necessarily a cam, not necessarily a striker, but there to score the goals and there to set up the goals. And I think he could probably excel there, especially if he keeps playing in the form that he is in.
All right, and then our last question. So, Anik Rustanov on Facebook mentioned that he believes playoff hopes survive another week, and I feel like he's one of the most objective Quakes fans I know. So, if he believes that the Quakes still have a chance, then our beliefs are pretty justified as well. And this is also related to a question we got both from Tishana on Discord and our friend Danny from L3 Pod. Let's both say percentage. What would that percentage of making the playoffs be at this moment in time with both the loss to Real Salt Lake and the win against Austin? Anywhere from 0 to 100%.
With as our probability of making the playoffs?
Yes, it doesn't have to be you don't have to have done the math ahead of time, just your gut feeling.
Gut feeling, with no banter, I would say probably 69% confident that we will push
no
through.
Banter, and then you say 69%. Oh my gosh. No, that's a tectonic take right there.
Yes, indeed. I think we're more likely to make that push than not. I believe in that late push. It's gonna be a late push down to the wire, but we believe in the club and we want to see them succeed. What would you say the percentage is?
I say the percentage is around 50%. I think it depends on the next few games to put yourself in a position to succeed, and you are relying on other teams, but you still have enough to make a statement for yourself with the results you achieve yourselves. So I think 50% would be the highest I would go.
All right, yeah, I wouldn't say that's not a bad shout. I'd say that's a pretty fair shout, for sure.
Before we go, just 2 more things to do. First is thank our sponsors. Thanks to our sponsor, Roughneck Scarves, official scarf supplier to MLS, USL, and US Soccer. Get custom scarves for your group or team at roughneckscarves.com. And if you're tired of the same old cookie cutter templates from Nike and Adidas, if you're looking for a unique, completely custom kit for your youth club or Sunday League squad, Icarus FC can help you create the kit of your dreams at an affordable price. Let them help you design your new kit today at icarusfc.com. And let's briefly preview the next game versus LAFC. And it's looking like only 2 California teams will reach the playoffs this season. And this game could determine who joins LA Galaxy. San Jose Earthquakes beat LAFC last time by hanging on to a lead for a significant amount of time. It's what they did in this Austin game. It's something they haven't done too many times. So hopefully lightning can strike once again. And my 2 questions for you before our closing tectonic take is the triangle of rivalries brewing. So we have the Cali Clasico between Galaxy and San Jose. We have the El Tráfico between LA Galaxy and LAFC. Is there some potential rivalry between San Jose Earthquakes and LAFC? Could this be kind of like a Chelsea Arsenal Tottenham situation?
I would absolutely agree. Yes. I was there up in the stands from when Carlos Vela got his hat trick. I believe last season or a couple of seasons ago. We lost really bad. I believe that was one of the first games we played against them. And to start off like that, it's to brew up a rivalry. You know, it's to want to go to their house and win. It's to defend our house, and it's to go out there and make sure we get the 3 points. You know, I would say that there is definitely a rivalry brewing. Not as big as the Cali Clásico, you know, but it's definitely a fixture to play for. Definitely a fixture to go out there and win.
All right, and I think for me, the jury's still out. I think there was a large stretch of time where, like Minnesota United, LAFC just keep beating us and seemingly effortlessly. So we do need to make up for that with more results in our favor. But there are some potential for a rivalry. And the last point I have is the Quakes played yesterday on Saturday. The LAFC will play tonight. Do you think that extra day of rest will help San Jose Earthquakes, or since it's roughly a week for both teams, it kind of evens out?
It could kind of even out, I would say. The extra day is good for the legs. Maybe not so for the mind. You know, maybe they would want to ride the wave a bit of the fixture that just passed. But take it in the right way. It could be a good rest day and a day to understand the tactics that are going to go in for this next fixture versus LAFC.
All right. And lastly, your prediction for the LAFC game. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw. I think we're going to have to settle, not necessarily settle, but we're not going to win every game down the stretch. I think that going to the Bank of California Stadium for this one, I think we might be stuck on a draw on this one, but hopefully we at least score and we get something to build on for the next game.
That's a shout. I could see that, you know, 1-1. For my prediction, I would say I would love the Quakes to win. I think it's going to be a pretty good game. I'm going to say 2-1 with Wando off the bench. I believe he was being saved possibly for this game. We'd love to see it, you know.
All right. Well, thank you for making time to podcast with me this time, Chris. Our social media links will be in the podcast description and the YouTube description if you're watching us on YouTube. And go Quakes.
Go Quakes. Thank you for having me on, Ivan.
Yep. Until next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.